So I remember we tried to record the Euthanasia record on Pro Tools. We built a studio here, and these were big budgets and, big SSL consoles and, your typical producer hired to cut the record. So, the big studio mentality for sure. I remember we had Westlake Audio out of California. They supplied a lot of the equipment for building the studio out here in Phoenix in this warehouse that we have rented. And every time we would start a take, we'd get to like the first chorus, and the Pro Tools would just lock up and it would stop. Right, it would glitch. Right.
Yes.
That they call it today, the TDM system, right? So it's all multi-track. So this is a primitive version of that. You'd slave, I forgot what they were, 12 track models. They're like those old Alesis, 8 amps or something.
Right.
You'd slave a few of them together, right? And so you're finally getting rocking, you're feeling good, you get your coffee, your chops are up, all right, your jam, because we were cutting the band together in one take. This is the Euthanasia album. And, you get right to the chorus, the Trade of Consequences, and the thing would lock up. So, we'd be playing, the producer would stop.
Right.
So just total, buzz, right? Just complete. And then he'd be taking around, all right, guys, why don't you go get a coffee, take a break? And it's like, oh, fuck.
The David Ellefson Show. Featuring Grammy Award winner David Ellefson and respected metal journalist Joshua Toomey. Presented by EllefsonEmporium.com. Here's David and Joshua.
Hey, so David Ellefson here on the David Ellefson Show. Josh Toomey here. Today, cool guest, blues guitar player, Anthony Gomes, with his new album, Praise the Loud, that just came out on the road now. He caught my ear. He's on Rat Pak Records, which is where I put out the Ellefson Soda records, and Joe O'Brien, who owns the labels, become a good friend of mine. So he sent me Anthony's record. I listened to it. I go, this is cool. We should invite him on the show. So cool conversation. He's got some great experience. I love how his whole kind of process of making records and one more time, regardless of the genre, it just goes to show we're all in the same band. Right. So, but I enjoyed talking to him, and he's got a cool, gritty sound. He's kind of a, somewhere between Leslie West and Mountain and Bad Company, and I don't know, he kind of fits. He's kind of got an old soul that I liked. So,
yeah, the new album was great. Praise the Loud. He's big on the puns. Got a lot of great lyrics on the record. We dive into his writing process, how he writes, gets the ideas for all of his writing, and then just some silly stuff too with his pop collection and all kinds of stuff. So the new album looks great too, like the blue vinyl that they have out. Make sure to go check that out over at Rat Pak Records also. So yeah, fun conversation with Anthony.
Let's do it. Hey, just want to give a shout out to Non Heinus, who did our awesome skull artwork, which is kind of mascots that we have here for the David Ellefson Show. So, Josh, thanks for bringing him over. You've got his Instagram handle, right? Because you can get some discounts if bands or people want to use him for stuff, for merch, right?
Yeah, head over to Non Heinus on Instagram, NonHeinous on Instagram. Let him know that the David Ellefson Show sent you. He'll give you 15% off if you need art for your podcast, your merch, your album, all that great stuff. And it's not he'll work with you the entire way through. He sends you like actual hand-drawn sketches. What do you like about this? Do you like that? It's not AI. It's not a bunch of nonsense. Like, he actually is an artist, and he's doing some great stuff out there. He's done stuff for my podcast. He's done stuff now for the David Ellefson Show, and just a cool dude, man. And if you go check him out, just go follow him on Instagram, because you'll enjoy all of his art that he puts up daily over there too. So he's a good dude, and support the art.
Just like forming Vic Rattlehead.
There you go.
Beginning to a final mascot. So cool. Thanks, Non Heinus. We appreciate you, brother. So yeah, go check him out.
Hey, Josh, how are you doing?
Hello,
brother?
I'm doing well.
And grammatically correct. That's a beautiful thing.
So he's also got another super cool podcast called Talk To Me. and he's done all the Not Fest podcasts and all kinds of stuff. So he's a pro. I'm the novice.
You should explain that to the YouTube commenters that have now come at me. That
yeah. Well, because you made fun of Lars. You said the sin of
Oh my God.
Only they can say that. You can't say that.
I like the someone called me a dork with glasses and a beard the other day. I was like, that's nice.
Well, if you got to believe all the good things people say, then you have to believe the bad things. So
right.
If you don't believe any of it, you're ahead of the game.
Yeah, you've got to take it in this world. It's like, zero on Monday, 0 by Tuesday, not bad by Friday. You know what I mean? Well, hey, I'm David Ellefson. Welcome to the David Ellefson Show. My co-host, Joshua Toomey, here, and we have a super cool guest today, blues rock guitar player Anthony Gomes. Am I saying that right? Gomes?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
cool.
This is why you're such the pro, David.
Well, our mutual friend, Joe O'Brien at Rat Pak Records, because we actually are label mates, which is kind of how we ended up, the three of us getting on this podcast today. So you have a brand new record. I haven't even opened it. I want to keep it sealed. So cool. Yeah. Joe was kind enough to send me a vinyl, looking super badass. And, here's the thing. I get vinyl. I'm not a vinyl collector, so I say I get vinyl. I don't collect vinyl. So I get vinyl, and then I immediately go to iTunes and I buy everything because that's where I actually listen to music. Right? So I don't know what the vinyl sounds like, but digitally it sounds pretty bitchin'. So anyway, I'm
don't carry a record player around in your car, David. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I never liked how it skipped. I always hated how it got fuzz and lint around the needle. To me, it's problematic,
But you got to be religious about it, right? So I have a spin cleaner. It's not a casual experience, right? Vinyl is not a passive listening. I mean, you have to be full on. You can't be vacuuming or whatever. You got to put this thing on and be dedicated to it. I will say this about Rat Pak, and not because Joe sent you a free album, but they do an incredible job with vinyl. And to me, vinyl can really vary in terms of audio quality. And I'm so proud of our albums in part because of the company that Joe uses to press it. And we always get a lot of positive feedback from the people who buy it and do listen to it. So,
it's great you say that so are you a vinyl guy, like vinyl versus digital? Like, what's your preference?
David, I am every band's dream fan. I buy multiple vinyl variants. I stream it. I buy the CD. My favorite bands get so much money from me because I just nerd out on it. Nice. But yeah, I love every different medium because I get something different as a listener. Just like, okay, here's my analogy for, musicians who may not be into vinyl, whatever. It's like when you're performing a gig, you get a different vibe at a small club than you do at a big venue. Your show is different. The way you present it is different. Mm-hmm. And for me as a listener, vinyl gives me a way different thing. Like I'm a big Otis Redding fan. And I listened to these vinyl albums and the kick drum was kicking my ass. I was like, damn, this sounds so good. And I didn't get that feeling from streaming or from a CD. So it's interesting how listening to it in that format, now I go and I listen to, when I stream, I listen to that with that in my mind, if that makes any sense. So,
interesting. Yeah. How about you, Josh? What are you? So Josh, look, I play thrash metal, which basically, by all intents and purposes, I'm a classic rock guy now, right? Like that's my genre is so old. We're classic rock, right? Josh is new metal. You're obviously blues, with leanings into, Detroit, basically, right? Motown, right? Probably, Chicago blues, Texas blues, all this stuff.
Yeah, everything from John Lee Hooker to Judas Priest,
We're good with that.
Yeah.
We're good with that. So, but what do you listen? How do you listen to music?
Honestly, unfortunately, I'm a streaming guy. Like I like the earbuds, throw it in my phone. The one thing I have noticed is if somebody sends me something new, like, hey, check this out. What do you think of this? I will at least wait till I get to the car, because I won't play it on the phone and like just use the phone speaker. Like I at least want to get it in just some sort of system that sounds decent. But I had some listeners send me some CDs not too long ago, and I realized that I don't even have a CD player in the house. Like it's like we've just gone that far in life that no CD players in the new cars, no CD players in the house. Like I was just like, well, how am I supposed to listen to this? So I just looked it up on streaming and checked it out there. But yeah, I do love having a record. I do love having the big physical in the hand. I don't, I do own a record player, but I don't, use it often. I do like having the big physical. I liked your record. Your record looks beautiful online from what I see. The big blue and the white, the splatter, and it looks great. Yeah, you can see kind of a small photo of it there on the cover. It looks beautiful. So hopefully it sounds as beautiful as it looks,
I don't see. I'm the vinyl guy that I don't even want to open it. I want to preserve it pristine, right?
Right.
I had all my Kiss records still in the shrink wrap. Because it's funny. One of my favorite things when I get vinyl is to open it and that smell that comes out, right?
Yeah.
It's distinctive. It's the print, it's the ink, it's everything. And it's funny. I called Joe back, and so Joe puts out the Ellefson Soto records that I do with Jeff Scott Soto. So. And you're right. He does an incredible job with, sweatbands, patches. Like he's very like in my genre with metal. He knows what that is. Obviously, your genre. He knows very clearly what your fans, what your tribe buys. Right. So
Right. Yes.
it's a package. And in fact, I talked to him yesterday because we've got a new Ellefson Soto record coming out probably this summer, and he we shot the videos for it. And in LA a couple weeks ago. And I said, so what's your release date? He goes, well, I'm waiting for the vinyl. I want to make sure the vinyl's here before I send it out because I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. And it's funny, when I had my record label, it was the same thing. We'd put up a pre-order, you'd put a disclaimer, hey, due to vinyl shipping, we don't have an exact date, but we're thinking it's within 6 months, right? Whereas Joe is like, yeah, I'm not doing any of that until my hand. So I'm not announcing a pre-order. So I love that about him. He truly is a record label man with integrity. And he's, I think, ultimately a fan. Joe and I have been friends since the 2000s. We've been threatening to put some records out together. Finally, we did, So how many records have you done on Rat Pak now?
This is our second Rat Pak release.
Yeah. Okay. And you have, like, I was looking at your discography on Wikipedia. You have, what is it, almost a dozen records or something, right?
I think this is our 14th studio album.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're a Canadian. What got you into the blues? Did you like, what's your history?
Well, I'm a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, and they haven't won the cup since I've been alive. So that's really, man, it's a bummer. No, it's strange because you don't immediately think of Canada when you think of blues. Like it's probably the most furthest thing in your mind is Canada and blues. But I got into blues like a lot of people. I loved Jimi Hendrix and the Rolling Stones. And, I would read these interviews and they talk about Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters and B.B. King. And, and then from like Hendrix, I got into Stevie Ray Vaughan. And so as a late teen, I said, I'm going to get myself a proper blues album. And I lived in the Toronto suburbs, and again, not really a bluesy thing to be, and I got on 2 buses, took the subway, went to a great record store called Sam the Record Man, went up on the 3rd floor, got a CD, was on sale for $5.99, B.B. King, Live at the Regal, and on the sticker it said one of the greatest blues albums of all time. I went home, put it on the CD player, and all of a sudden I had this huge moment. It's like Jimi Hendrix made sense to me. ZZ Top made sense to me. Led Zeppelin made sense because they had taken what I was listening to and then gone down another road with it. Now that I knew where they kind of were getting it from, it really was inspiring because I could go to that place and then move in my direction. So I always felt like, here's an analogy. Like you tell everybody, hey, I love apple pie, but I've never had an apple, so I loved Cream and Led Zeppelin and, Iron Maiden and all this stuff. But it was the apple in all those bands that I really dug, it was, in Iron Maiden, it was that they listened to Paul Kossoff and Free, and then those guys listened to B.B. King. So I guess to understand where I was going, I needed to know where it came from, maybe in the whole way of looking at it.
Steve Clark, God rest his soul, from Def Leppard, he always said that too. That was if you want to sound like your hero, listen to what your heroes listen to.
What great advice.
Backstory, right? Get the backstory of it so you really understand what inspired them. I grew up a Kiss, Cheap Trick fan and stuff. And I wasn't a Beatles fan per se, just because I was born in 1964, so I missed them, right? So at the time, and my mom had some Beatles stuff around, but it's like, and I heard it, and it was fine, but it wasn't my song. It wasn't my generation. When I saw Kiss Live and Kiss Destroyer, I was like, okay, there we go. And then I realized that they listened to the Beatles. Listen to Cheap Trick. I'm like, oh my God, this is the Beatles, So Rick Nielsen shamelessly just, is a very open about, he was a big Beatles fan, and where he got it from. So Electric Light Orchestra, these are kind of
yes.
When I was growing up, these guys doing that. So let me ask you something. So when you make your records, because we started the conversation here, digital versus, vinyl, analog, and all this kind of stuff. So when you make these albums, I noticed, Chris Collier mixed and mastered it. He does my Ellefson Soda records, and Chris, it works for Korn, just to give kind of a reference for our audience here on the podcast. In fact, I think he was kind of in between Jonathan Duke's vocal takes while he was mixing my record.
Right.
Back in January, I think it was, right? So obviously he's got that world, is a world he comes from, new metal, those kind of tones, those things. Obviously, I can hear tremendous, great low end on here. Chris's kind of low end templates I'm familiar with. And I'm not talking loud bass. I'm just talking on nice, warm low end. But when you're making these records, are you doing these at home? Are they on Pro Tools? Or are you like, how do you make your record? Do you go into a studio? Or are you old school? Because how do you make a blues record like this?
I think, whatever works for the artist works for the artist. And for us, I like the home studio idea. For my vocal, we have a vocal booth, Neve preamp, great mic. And I like the idea that I can go in, and if I'm not feeling it on Tuesday, then I'll go sing it on Wednesday. And I like that feeling that you're not under the gun, because I have made albums in big studios with big budgets. And I've always felt like, some people thrive in that situation. To me, I feel more comfortable in a relaxed thing and go back and listen to it and analyze it. And just try to capture that magic. Billy Gibbons says, good recording, you get lightning in a bottle. And that's what I think at home I'm better able to do that. But I could see for other artists, it's a different thing. What about you, David, when you're doing, your ES albums? So how do you do those?
So, it's funny, back in the early 90s, I remember when I bought my first Macintosh LE, I think it was, right? And I was wanting to get into Pro Tools. I was the full digital man, right? I'm really embracing this. And in Megadeth, we always embraced whatever was available, the 90s records. After Rust in Peace, we record on the Sony 48. We would fly things over to Pro Tools, and Dan Huff, we were working in Nashville, and it was one of Dan's, I think it was actually his second production. He'd produced Lone Star, and then he was now doing, Cryptic Writings Megadeth album. And he would come in, he was working on getting out of the session scene. So he's still finishing, guitar playing contracts that he had. Like he'd wake up in the morning, go in, cut a solo on a guy's, album, and probably country #1, top 10. I mean, he'd go in, blast that, then he'd come over and I'd walk in the studio and he's sitting there editing things in Pro Tools,
Right.
And then just fly back over to 48. Then we'd carry on with the day's work, So it was laborious. And of course, now I work on Pro Tools always, really, it just, I think for metal, for what I like, because Pro Tools sounds great now. The low end is killer. Once the TDM came about, and what I liked about it mostly is for composing. I like that you can playlist, if you want to do a take, hey, let me do a chorus up an octave. Da, 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 da. Let me do a chorus down an octave. Hey, let's add this little transition piece here going into the bridge or whatever. You can playlist, try a couple things. And, because sometimes, as you know, when you're recording, sometimes you're building the song in the studio, right? And
yes,
I remember one Megadeth record I did, the 13 album, I played bass. Johnny K was producing. I played bass, and we did. And he kept saying, he goes, I have no idea what Dave's going to sing in this. I don't know what his melodies are. We aren't that far yet. So he goes, play one chorus up, play one chorus down. And so I just kind of gave him all the parts, right? I played through these songs 3 times, and he said, good, I got everything I need. So if I got to kind of pick and choose and sort of piece a bass part together. In fact, there's one song that I remember I had to learn a bass part that I didn't play because we kind of crafted it. I think he dropped notes and moved things around in Pro Tools, and he sort of he sort of chopped. So like this can go any number of ways, and in metal. I mean, just like when you're recording and making records, it's probably the same thing, especially modern vein. That's kind of how we roll, right? It's not like play it from the top. Yay, we got a good take. Let's move on. You know what I mean? It's not that organic, I don't think, right?
Yeah. I mean, in this day and age, it's about the song and making the song come to life. And we actually do bass and drums last. Because
so funny you say that. I'm getting ready to play on an album. That's what they said. It said, get everything done, and then I'll be over and I'll play bass last. And it's funny. I did that on the Megadeth Cryptic Writings record.
Okay.
I said, we put Dave's guitar down, then I played bass, and that's how the bass got so big. The bass was huge. And that was a day when I was playing a lot of right hand picking. And then I realized, if I just play 8s and 16s, all of a sudden it sounds like I'm picking. It sounds bigger because every time you hit a bass string, you're essentially suffocating the note. You're stopping the bass wave from developing, right? So I realized, wow, I can actually play a lot simpler. It sounds bigger and makes the track bigger,
Yes.
So I'm down with it. So do you put things down, like say with a drum machine, or do you just play to a click and then
a click or a basic drum groove and you lay it down? I like it because if you have a drum performance, you're sort of locked into that, and if the drummer did something here or played halftime in a pre-chorus, you're really locked in. Where Paul McCartney, we talked about the Beatles, he always played bass last. And it's interesting because his bass lines were always so melodic because he had everything to draw from.
Well, that's what I tell people. I say, I played on a ballad thing here recently, and it was a metal ballad, but I said the same thing. I said, give me everything you got, including the vocal, because there's all these little, I call them the Mariah Carey parts, right? These sort of pop bass playing that you can add these little nuances and these little, melodic counterparts to a vocal. And, you kind of think, well, bass should be down here as the foundation. It's like, not really, why not let it, sit up here along and be a melody instrument as well. So that's cool, man. Well, good. I was wondering when I was listening to this, you put this together, if it's just 3 guys in a room rocking, take it, or if you're as sort of neurotic as the rest of us,
I'm neurotic, and for blues, I'm very new school in my approach. I've been a Kemper player since 2016. And in the beginning, I took a lot of heat for that, but I like to embrace technology. Whenever there's a new advance, there's 2 schools, right? People go, this is the greatest thing ever. And then people go, oh my gosh, this is the end of the world as we know it. And, they're both right in some way, so we have this whole AI thing now, and people are like, it's horrible, and in this one interview I did, I said, hey, I like to be open to whatever technology. And then I got slammed, you're writing songs with AI now. And it's like, no, I just said I'd be open to the idea. Like I'd be open to anything with technology. And I did some records with the late, great Jim Gaines, who produced Stevie Ray Vaughan. He engineered Carlos Santana's records, responsible for his tones. And I remember, so this is like 2002, he's like, okay, we're going to make this album together. Now, remember, buy tape. You got to buy 2-inch tape. Okay. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Then 3 years later, we come to make a record and I'm like, okay, Jim, I got some tape. I got, a couple of reels. He's like, tape? Nobody uses tape anymore.
Where do you even get tape? What you're talking about is like the Ampex 2-inch.
Yeah. I had to meet a guy that knew a guy in the back of the alley.
Yeah. I mean, I've got like down here on the bottom right there, that's an Ampex award, for a Megadeth record that's, had sold a certain amount. They would just steam you with those and, they would give you those. And I got a handful of them, and I just have it there because it's kind of funny. It's like tape. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, Ampex, funny, suddenly you say the end of the world, all of a sudden digital and Pro Tools shows up and it's like, buy Ampex, that's gone.
Yeah.
Josh and I were talking about the other day. He's up gigging and get some stuff coming up. And we were talking about, do we use a Kemper on stage? Did I just plug into a DI? What did you ever decide with that, Josh, for bass?
I think for this first tour back, I think we're gonna go old school and throw up some amps. But eventually we need to get into some Kempers and stuff like that, and actually, move on to the modern world, like our friend Anthony here. Right. Anthony, I wanted to talk to you about lyrics, man. The one thing that listening to the record, you love a good pun, you love a good play on words. Definitely made me smile a lot on the record. And one lyric that jumped out at me was when she said, "I've had 20 husbands, but only 2 are mine." And I was like, I've known a few ladies like that, man. So where do your lyrics, kind of come from? Are you a guy that, has a notes app that you write stuff down, just kind of keep a track of all the good play on words and stuff?
Yeah. I don't write them down typically because if they're worth remembering, you remember them. And everybody sort of got a go-to, like in my mind, Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top is my go-to barometer. It's like, would Billy Gibbons do this? Would, we have a song called Fur Covered Handcuffs or on a previous album. It's like, is this too stupid? And it's like, no, man, Billy would do it. I'm a big Bon Scott fan. And there was a blues guy named Albert Collins who always had a lot of humor. And I think it's really important. And it's funny because sometimes people think that humor is less serious, or if you have it's a novelty song. But to me, humor can really strike a chord. It can unify an audience. You may have an audience that is very different in terms of how they vote politically, what their views are socially. But you crack a good joke and it disarms everybody. And I feel if you ever have something very important to say, you do it immediately after something funny because people's guards are down. So I always look at humor as a very serious thing. But it's good to laugh, man.
That's a line worth remembering. Humor is a very serious thing.
Yeah.
That's the title of the podcast.
There we go.
It's worth remembering right there. So, it's funny. So I listened to it and I put it on because I see, rocker dude on the front, right? So you don't know what this is. So you go, I bought a lot of albums just because they looked cool, right? There's Pat Travers Putting It Straight.
Yes.
Various whatever. Judas Priest, Unleash the East is like, fuck yeah, that looks rad. So, you buy it. I hear your voice and you've got this, I'm sure you hear this all the time, Leslie West of Mountain, it's funny on particular, I think it was is it on Inside Out or Meet My Maker? There was this one. As soon as I heard it, I was like, man, this is totally Paul Rogers, 1974 Bad Company. I mean, it was just straight off that. I was like, an old soul, and I guess I know now why, because of the influences that you have named here, in the podcast. But how about singing that stuff live? How does your voice hold up doing that? Because there's a lot of guttural, primal scream coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
rest and hydration are the most important things. So that means no partying, no alcohol. And, I'm lucky because I'm a guitar player, so I'm not a lead singer. I don't suffer from that disease. Yeah. But at the same time, it can really get into your head when you look at a tour schedule and you have 20 dates, you got to sing in 25 days, and there's travel and jet lag, and there's fatigue. If you're just a guitar player or a drummer and you're not singing, well, and you're up all night and your voice is scratchy, it doesn't impact your playing. As a vocalist, it's your instrument. So, you just try to do the best you can every night and get as much rest as possible. Try not to get sick, do all the un-rock and roll things so you can deliver the best rock and roll show for your audience. I mean, it's like, I don't know. It's like God's practical joke. It's like, yes, you will be in a rock band. Yes, you can have all this fun, but if you do it, you'll sing like shit.
Yeah,
it's just like,
I know. The two words that I never knew until just a couple of years ago when I started singing a lot more was vocal rest.
Yes.
And in fact, I had to even go to a speech therapist to retrain my voice because I was put on a high blood pressure medicine called lisinopril. And I started coughing, and it was when I put out the Dieth Records, which is a band that I have out of Poland, and we put it out. I'm doing all the press, talking every day, singing at the shows. This cough is happening, and I'm not sure why. So I started going to doctors. I went to a radiologist in Germany, and they're like, "Your lungs are clear, you're fine." And it's like, clearly I'm not. So I come home after going around the world, and I come home and I go to my cardiologist, right? So, I just do the annual checkup, make sure that the heart's still ticking, and it is. It's good, So I go, and she goes, "Hey, I noticed you got a little cough there." And I said, "Yeah, you think?" And she goes, "I see you're on lisinopril." She goes, that one of the main side effects is they can give you this tickle cough. Just thinking, and she didn't even prescribe it to me. A different doctor did. I'm thinking, Are you kidding me? It was this simple to do it. But by that point, it had trashed my throat, So I went to an ENT here in town, an ear, nose, and throat guy, and he's treated everybody because he worked for Live Nation, so he's treated every singer under the sun. And so he really knew what he was doing, he got right in, and fortunately I was able to fix it medically and not surgically, because all of a sudden, surgery is just a word you don't want to hear when it comes to your vocal cords, So I had a close call with that, and it was so dumb over a medicine, and turns out after I stopped taking, I didn't need to take it anyway. Blood pressure's fine.
Right.
My blood pressure went down when I realized I don't have to have my throat to surgery. Isn't it funny? It's you're out on the road, something starts hurting, and you're like, whether it's your wrist, your arm, or elbow's gonna kink, you're like, okay, that better go away, or otherwise, like, what am I gonna do? You know what I mean? That's the thing is, when you're playing 5-6 nights a week, singing 5-6 nights a week, there's just a relentless pace that, while it's fun and it's great, and when you're in the moment, the adrenaline kicks and you don't really notice some of these things, but it's like, then after, like you say, after a month, you're like, holy hell, that just kicked my ass, so.
Yeah. And I lose a few notes on the top of my range, and, things get scratchy. And
but let me ask you this, and not to cut you off. I find my voice gets better and stronger the more I sing. And I've heard other singers say that too, that at the beginning of the tour, my voice is at its weakest because it's not in that performance stamina that you can only get from being on stage. So I find my voice gets even stronger the more I sing.
I agree. The only thing that can throw a curveball is if you get a cold or, anything like that. And then it's like, oh, wow. Okay, now I need like 4 days of rest, but I can't cancel these shows. So now I got to squeak through these, and, you play catch up. But yes, I agree. It's being battle ready. I love that idea. And I find my playing is sharper. But we want everybody to know, David, like, if you come to see the first show on the tour, it still will be great, right? We want them to know that.
It's still, you've been the best audience of the tour so far.
Yes.
Hey, so you've got tour dates coming up. I think like kicking. So the album just came out April 25th, I think, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yep. So definitely pick this up. Praise the Loud, Anthony Gomes, tour dates. And Josh is going to post them here as well. So anything in particular on the tour coming up? Is there any special show you're really looking forward to? Do you have VIPs? Do you have all the stuff?
We do we're doing a great festival in Romania. And it's crazy. Beth Hart's on the bill, and Orianthi, and just a bunch of great blues rock artists.
Yeah.
So that'll be a lot of fun. It's our typical audience these days is like 500 people. We're still in the clubs and music venues, but it's great to do the festivals where, we're playing to, 10, 15,000 people. So
I was just in Romania back in November, and for the first time ever, I went to Transylvania. There's the tour dates right there.
Awesome.
AnthonyGomes.com. Is that where everybody?
Yeah. Pimp it, Dan.
There it is. Yeah. But yeah, I went to Transylvania for this first time. I remember Al Petrelli, who was in Megadeth with me, many years back. He played with Asia for a while, and he was telling me how he went to Transylvania. And you think Vlad the Impaler, the whole thing, and that's actually more Bucharest, right? But but Transylvania was awesome, man. It was like this rich town. It was a bitchin' soccer stadium thing. We played at this club kind of down below the stadium, and big, there's always a castle up on a hill. So Dracula's got to be up there somewhere, But well, good, man. Well, that's awesome. Well, dude, thanks for being on the show here, and thanks to our friend Joe O'Brien, Rat Pak, for what a great job he does and connecting us. Like I said, I saw your videos. He sent them to me because we're just getting ready to shoot our videos for me and Jeff Scott Soto, and I was like, that's freaking badass, man. So
thank you, dude.
I usually let Josh close it up. Gives the zinger question or the kind of trap. So,
well, just in looking through your stuff, man, it looks like you're a big Funko Pop collector. Is there a prize possession in your collection?
I'm waiting on my David Ellefson one to come.
Right?
Yeah, but
we were just talking about those. It's funny. Here's a funny story. So I go to record the Lucid album, right? With so that's got Mike Heller. Oh, there, yeah. If we take the makeup off, it kind of looks like Dave Ellefson, black. So I go to Mike Heller's studio. So Mike plays in Raven. He's in Fear Factory, but so he's producing the Lucid record. So it's me and Drew from Bang Tango and Vinny, the singer from Sponge, right? We're making this little one-off record during COVID. And I go to his house, and he knows I'm from Megadeth, of course, and so we start recording the album. Drew tells me later, he goes, dude, Mike Heller is a huge Metallica fan, and he had a whole wall of all those Funko Pops of Metallica.
Right.
And because you're in Megadeth, he took them all down and he put them away in the closet.
Oh, my God.
I want to make you mad. I'm like, are you kidding? I said, I'm a huge Metallica fan. It's like, I would have sat there and watched all of them as I'm playing,
Right.
So that was my Funko Pop story. So anyway, I love Mike Heller, and he's such a sweet, kind guy.
Yeah, man. Well, for me, I love Funko Pops because I think you have to let the kid out when you're recording. It's playing music, right? You should have fun. And the thing that I dig about Funkos is that they immortalize a moment in time. So I have like Hendrix setting his guitar on fire from the Monterey Festival, or, if I'm thinking of a guitar part or whatever, and I look and I see there's a little Slash or an Eddie Van Halen, I'd like, what would Eddie do here? What would Slash do? And it's almost like they're the judge and jury behind me, don't suck, kid, okay. So
I keep my Kiss lunchbox over here on the corner, just to like remember why I'm here, and I love you said playing music. I say that all the time. It's not working music, it's playing music,
Exactly.
It should be enjoyable, it should be fun. And so that's great, man. Well, look, we hope to meet up with you here somewhere in your travels. Yes. And if you come through Indianapolis or Indiana or Kentucky, well, I won't even say that town because we need to keep Josh's anonymity. He's out in the sticks in that part of town. I'm in Phoenix, of course.
Right.
So anyway, but I look forward to meeting up, and thanks for taking a couple of minutes. I know you're getting ramped up for your tour here, so thanks for stopping by. And
thank you so much, gentlemen. Appreciate the time, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you guys today. Thanks so much.
Praise the loud. See you.
Hell yeah. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you. See you.
The David Ellefson Show.